The heart monitor screamed a single, unbroken tone as the gurney burst through the emergency doors, and for one suspended second, the entire room understood something was already going wrong. A man in a shredded tactical shirt thrashed against the restraints, blood darkening the sheets, boots kicking hard enough to rattle metal. "Don't touch me!" he shouted, voice raw, feral, eyes wide and unfocused, as if the white lights above were burning desert sun. Captain Ryan Cole, mid-30s, Navy SEAL, half-conscious and bleeding out, had just woken up in a war that never ended. Hands rushed in anyway. Latex snapped. Someone reached for sedation. Another voice cut through, sharp and annoyed. "He's combative. We need him restrained." A young resident leaned too close, eyes bright with the thrill of a real crisis. Ryan surged upward, yanking free a monitor lead. It clattered to the floor. An IV pole tipped and struck tile with a hollow crack. Security froze at the doorway, caught between protocol and instinct. "This isn't panic," a nurse muttered, stepping back. "This is combat." Ryan's breathing came fast, shallow. His gaze slid past faces, past scrubs, past the ceiling. He wasn't seeing St. Ridge Emergency. He was seeing sand. Night. Radios whispering names that never came back. "Clear the bay," the attending snapped, jaw tight. "He's dangerous." The word landed heavy. Dangerous. Not wounded. Not human. Dangerous. Then at the edge of the room, someone no one had been watching stopped walking. Emily Harper stood still, slim frame, hair pulled back too neatly, badge reading RN like an apology. She watched Ryan's chest heave. She watched his hands search for a weapon that wasn't there. Around her, the room closed in, loud and impatient, already deciding who he was, and already deciding who she wasn't. Michael Reeves pushed through the semicircle of bodies with the confidence of a man used to rooms obeying him. Mid-40s, crisp voice, sleeves already rolled. He took in the scene in a single glance and felt irritation spark before concern. "This is a hospital, not a battlefield," he said, loud enough to be heard, as if volume itself could restore order. "Get me restraints, now!" His eyes flicked to Emily and dismissed her just as quickly, registering the badge, the quiet posture, the lack of urgency he mistook for fear. Ryan lunged again, a sudden violent surge that sent a tray skidding. His knuckles scraped metal. He hissed through clenched teeth, not at the people, but at something only he could see. "Back," he warned, voice low now, dangerous in a different way. A resident flinched, hands hovering uselessly. Someone laughed under their breath, the brittle sound of nerves. "Another vet losing it," a voice whispered, meant to be private. Ryan heard it anyway. His jaw tightened. A vein pulsed at his temple. Emily moved before she decided to. Not fast, not dramatic. One step, then another, slipping past a nurse who didn't even notice. "Emily, don't!" someone said behind her, sharp with authority. "You're not cleared." She didn't answer. Her focus narrowed to Ryan's eyes, glassy, scanning, hunting. She recognized the rhythm of his breathing, the way his shoulders stayed coiled, ready, the way pain sat second to memory. She stopped an arm's length away. Close enough to be seen. Close enough to be a risk. Reeves turned, anger flaring. "Get her out of here," he snapped, already reaching for security. Emily leaned in instead, lowering her voice until it barely disturbed the air. 6 syllables. Quiet. Precise. A sound shaped by dust and radios and nights without names. Ryan froze. It was immediate, like a switch thrown. His chest stuttered, then slowed. His hands unclenched. The room kept moving for half a second longer before it noticed the impossible stillness at the center of it. Ryan swallowed hard. His eyes locked on Emily's face, recognition breaking through shock. "Ma'am," he breathed, reverent, undone. "Is that really you?" The change rippled outward, slow at first. Then all at once, like a shockwave no one felt until the glass started to tremble. Ryan lowered himself back onto the gurney without being told, muscles easing as if gravity had returned. His breathing evened. The monitor stuttered, then found a rhythm. Around them, the room stalled mid-motion, hands frozen, mouths half open. The authority that had filled the space moments ago, draining into confusion. "Did he just listen to her?" a resident murmured, too stunned to keep the thought inside. Michael Reeves stared at Emily, as if she had stepped through a wall. "Who are you?" he demanded, not loud now, but sharp, a question edged with something close to threat. Emily didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on Ryan, tracking the tremor in his fingers, the way his jaw worked as he tried to speak past memory. "You're bleeding," she said, gentle but firm, as if stating a fact that could not be argued. Ryan nodded once. He swallowed, the movement careful, reverent. "You pulled us out," he said, voice cracking, louder than he meant it to be. "You stayed." The words landed like dropped glass. Nurses exchanged glances. Security eased their grip on the tasers they had never drawn. Someone took a step back, as if giving the moment room. Emily's throat tightened. She reached out, 2 fingers to Ryan's wrist, checking his pulse with practiced calm. "Not here," she whispered. "Breathe." He did. He watched her like an anchor, eyes following every small motion. Then slowly, with effort that had nothing to do with his wounds, Ryan raised his right hand and brought it to his brow in a shaky, unmistakable salute. The room exhaled. A laugh escaped someone near the door, thin and disbelieving. "She's just a nurse," another voice said, softer now, uncertain. Ryan's eyes never left Emily's face. "No," he replied, steady as stone. "She's the reason any of us came home." Michael Reeves found his voice again, and when it came back, it carried steel. "That's enough," he said, stepping forward, reclaiming space. "You're in shock, Captain. Hallucinations happen." "Nurse, step away." His hand hovered near Emily's shoulder, not touching, already assuming compliance. Emily felt the room tighten, the old pressure of command posts and narrow corridors pressing in. She didn't move. Ryan turned his head toward Reeves, slow and deliberate, eyes clearing in a way that made the younger residents instinctively straighten. "You touch me before she says it's safe," Ryan said quietly, "and I walk out of here bleeding." It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The certainty in it landed heavier than any threat. Reeves blinked, recalibrating, unused to patience drawing lines. "You're not in control here," he snapped, but the words sounded thinner now, stretched. Emily finally looked up. Her gaze was steady, unreadable. "Let me see the wound," she said, not asking. She peeled back soaked gauze with careful hands. The smell hit first, sharp and metallic. Then the angle, the placement. Her breath caught, despite herself. She knew this pattern. The memory came fast, uninvited. A wall collapsing, a flash that turned night into white, radios screaming and then going dead. "No," she murmured, barely audible. "Not again." Ryan saw it in her face. "You remember?" he said, not a question. She nodded once. The room leaned in without realizing it. Someone swallowed hard. "What is she seeing?" a nurse whispered. Emily straightened, the softness gone from her posture now, replaced by something coiled and precise. "He wasn't hit by a straight round," she said. "This was blast fragmentation. Secondary impact. That's why he's crashing." Reeves scoffed, reflexively defensive. "And you know this how?" Ryan answered for her, pride cutting through pain. "Mosul. Communications tower. She read wounds when scans were a luxury." The word settled over the room, heavy and undeniable. "Doc." The alarms surged before anyone could argue, a sharp cascade of sound that snapped the room back into motion. Ryan arched against the gurney, breath hitching, skin draining of color. "Pressure's dropping," someone shouted. The monitor jittered, then dipped. Reeves reacted on instinct, reaching for the crash cart. "We're losing him," he barked. "Prep to shock." Hands moved fast, too fast. Panic crept in through the cracks of authority. Emily stepped into the space between the paddles and the patient. "No," she said, voice low but cutting. Reeves stared at her like she'd slapped him. "Get out of the way," he snapped. "He's coding." Emily didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "He's not dying," she said. "He's drowning." A resident hesitated, eyes flicking from the monitor to Ryan's neck, the distended veins, the uneven rise of his chest. Emily seized the moment. "Look," she pressed. "Right lung. Listen." Reeves scoffed, but doubt crept in anyway. Emily reached for the stethoscope without asking, movements clean, efficient. She listened, not just to breath sounds, but to the silence between them. "Tension physiology," she said. "Blast related. You shock him. You shredded what's left of his conduction. You decompress. You give him a chance." The room held its breath. The monitor dipped again, the line thinning. A young resident tore open a kit with shaking hands and thrust it toward her. "Here," he said, deciding. Emily didn't thank him. She aligned, cleaned, and drove the needle in with terrifying precision, the kind born where there are no second attempts. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then a hiss cut through the noise, sharp and unmistakable. The monitor shuddered, flattened, then climbed. Ryan's chest rose deeper, cleaner. Color crept back into his face. A hush fell so complete it felt physical. Reeves stared, stunned. "What did you just do?" he whispered. Emily exhaled, the fight draining just enough to speak. "What you don't have time to argue about," she said, and what he didn't have time to wait for. The room didn't rush back to life the way it usually did. It recalibrated. Movement slowed, then sharpened, every set of eyes tracking Emily, as if gravity had shifted toward her. She issued orders without raising her voice. Fluid levels adjusted, oxygen titrated, rhythm monitored. Doctors who outranked her on paper found themselves moving when she spoke, hands obeying before pride could interfere. Reeves stood off to the side now, silent, watching something he could not name take control of his department. Ryan's breathing steadied, each inhale deeper than the last. He watched Emily the way men watch land after weeks at sea. "You're still doing it," he murmured, voice rough but lighter now. "Still keeping everyone alive." She didn't answer. Her focus stayed on the numbers, the color of his skin, the subtle return of warmth. When she adjusted the IV, her hands were steady, but her jaw was tight, muscle working as memory pressed in from all sides. Reeves cleared his throat. The sound felt intrusive. "You said blast fragmentation," he began, choosing his words carefully now. "That level of assessment isn't typical." Emily finally looked at him. There was no challenge in her eyes, no triumph, only exhaustion, and something older. "Neither is surviving when extraction never comes," she replied. The words landed hard, not accusatory, just factual. A murmur rippled through the room. A nurse near the wall wiped her eyes without realizing it. Security relaxed fully, tasers lowered, shoulders slumping as the threat dissolved into awe. Ryan shifted, wincing, then settled. He reached out, fingers brushing Emily's wrist, light, respectful. "Don't disappear again," he said quietly. It wasn't a plea. It was a memory, asking to stay intact. Emily eased her hand free, gentle but firm. "Rest," she said. "You're stable." He nodded, trusting her in a way that felt sacred. Behind them, Reeves exhaled slowly, the weight of his certainty cracking. For the first time that night, St. Ridge Emergency understood it had never been in control at all. The quiet didn't last. It never did. A man in a pressed jacket appeared at the edge of the bay, too clean for trauma, posture stiff with practiced authority. He watched for a beat too long before speaking. "Captain Cole," he said, voice smooth, controlled. "We need a private conversation." His eyes slid to Emily. "And Nurse Harper. You'll come as well." Emily felt the temperature in the room drop. Not fear. Recognition. Ryan's gaze hardened instantly, the softness gone. "Not happening," he said, pushing himself a fraction higher despite the lines tugging at him. "She stays." The man smiled thinly. "This isn't your call." A pen clattered to the floor somewhere behind them. No one bent to pick it up. Emily straightened, shoulders settling into a posture she hadn't worn in years. "I'm discharged," she said evenly. "I'm not cleared for debrief." The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. "That's exactly why this matters." He reached into his jacket slowly. Security stiffened, breath held. He placed an envelope on the counter instead. Thick, unmarked. Her name printed the old way. Emily didn't touch it. Ryan shook his head once, small but urgent. "Don't," he murmured. She knew he meant the envelope. She also knew she would open it. The past had a way of choosing its moments. Emily slid a finger under the seal and unfolded the paper inside. It wasn't a letter. It was a list. Names, status lines. Her pulse thudded as she read the first entry. Captain Ryan Cole. Active. Alive. The next line took the air from her lungs. Emily Harper. Status reactivated. The alarms screamed again before anyone could speak. Ryan convulsed, the monitor spiking, then plunging. "He's crashing," a resident shouted. Hands lunged for the cart. "Get her out of here," someone yelled. Emily didn't move. She stepped closer, voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. "Push back," she said. "Now." No one listened at first. The attending lunged for the paddles, voice rising with adrenaline. "Charge!" he shouted. Emily crossed the last step and caught his wrist mid-motion, grip firm, unyielding. "You shock him," she snapped, eyes locked on the monitor, "and you finish him." The room recoiled at the audacity. A nurse gasped. Someone swore under their breath. The attending glared at her like she had lost her mind. "He's in ventricular collapse," he barked. "Move!" Emily didn't blink. "He's not collapsing," she said. "He's choking." She pointed with her chin. "Look at his neck. Look at the asymmetry. Listen to the right lung." A resident hesitated, then leaned in, stethoscope shaking slightly. His eyes widened. "There's barely any air movement," he said. The attending froze, doubt finally cracking through certainty. The monitor dipped again, the line thinning to a thread. 18 gauge, Emily ordered. Second intercostal, high and mid-clavicular. Silence. No one moved. Authority buckled under indecision. Ryan's hand tightened weakly around Emily's sleeve, eyes rolling back. "Don't let them touch me," he rasped. The resident who had watched her since the first code tore open a kit and pressed it into her palm. "Do it," he said, choosing. Emily didn't wait. She cleaned, aligned, and drove the needle home with brutal precision. A sharp hiss cut through the chaos, the sound of pressure escaping where it never should have been. The monitor flatlined for half a second that felt endless, then climbed, jagged and alive. Ryan sucked in a breath, deep and ragged, color bleeding back into his face. The room fell into stunned silence. Then voices returned, quieter now, reverent. "Pressure's coming up," someone whispered. Emily stayed where she was, hands steady, eyes never leaving Ryan, as if daring the world to take him back. The chaos didn't vanish. It reorganized around her. Orders moved faster now, cleaner, stripped of ego. Fluids adjusted, oxygen steadied, hands stopped shaking. Every person in the bay knew, without saying it, who they were following. Emily stood at the center of it, shoulders squared, eyes cold and focused, a conductor holding the room together by will alone. The envelope lay forgotten on the counter, its contents heavier than any chart. Ryan's breathing evened out, shallow but controlled. His eyes fluttered open just long enough to find her. "Doc," he whispered, the word worn smooth by memory. It hit harder this time. Not shouted, not dramatic, just truth slipping out when pain loosened the guardrails. Emily's jaw tightened. She adjusted a line, buying herself something to do. "Save your strength," she said quietly. "You're not done yet." Michael Reeves watched from a step back, face pale, posture changed. The authority he'd worn like armor sat crooked now. "That technique," he said, carefully. "That assessment, that's not taught." Emily didn't look at him. "Neither is knowing when not to ask permission," she replied. The words weren't sharp. They were final. A resident near the supply cart swallowed. "Who is she?" he whispered, not to anyone in particular. Another nurse answered without thinking. "Someone who's been here before." Security stood motionless, eyes tracking Emily with something close to respect. No one mentioned restraint. No one mentioned psych. Ryan shifted, wincing, then stilled. His fingers twitched, searching. Emily placed her hand over his, grounding him. "Stay with me," she said. He nodded faintly, trusting her with the parts of himself he'd buried overseas. Around them, St. Ridge Emergency moved on her axis, the old hierarchy quietly, irrevocably broken. The door slid open without ceremony, and the man who stepped inside did not raise his voice to be heard. Late 50s, silver hair, posture straight in a way hospitals rarely produced. He wore a uniform without decoration, the kind that didn't need it. The room felt him before it understood him. "Captain Cole," he said calmly. "Status," Emily answered before anyone else could. "Stable. Fragile. Improving." The man nodded once, accepting her authority without question, then turned his gaze to her face. Recognition flickered there, brief but unmistakable. "You shouldn't have been left carrying this alone," he said quietly. The words landed harder than any accusation. Emily's breath caught despite herself. "I made my choices," she replied. So did he. The man shook his head, slow, deliberate. "Your partner didn't die because you failed," he said. "He died buying time. That's in the after action." It always was. The room seemed to tilt. Emily stared at the floor. The weight she'd carried for years, suddenly misaligned, no longer fitting the shape she'd built around it. Ryan watched her, eyes bright with something deeper than pain. "Told you," he murmured, a ghost of a smile tugging at his mouth. "You saved us." Emily closed her eyes for half a second. When she opened them, her voice was steady. "Focus on breathing," she said, grounding herself in the practical. The man stepped back, giving space, then addressed the room. "This hospital owes her an apology," he said, not unkindly. "And a lesson." Michael Reeves swallowed hard. He stepped forward, stripped of pretense now. "I was wrong," he said, the admission costing him visibly. About you. About tonight. Emily looked at him. Really looked. Then learn from it, she said. Don't waste it. Around them, the monitors hummed on, steady and alive, as the past finally loosened its grip and the night edged toward something like truth. Ryan asked to sit up once the worst of the danger had passed, and when he did, the room leaned toward him without realizing it. IV lines tugged. Monitors protested softly. He ignored them. With careful effort, he brought his right hand to his chest, posture straightening despite the pain. Emily felt it before she saw it, the shift in him, the weight of intention. You don't have to, she said quietly. He looked at her, eyes clear, unwavering. I do. The hallway beyond the glass had filled without sound. Doctors, nurses, residents who had laughed at her badge, staff who had looked through her for months. They stood frozen now, watching a man shaped by war choose his moment. Ryan lifted his hand higher, slower than regulation, imperfect and shaking, and gave a full battlefield salute. For the record, he said, voice carrying through the glass, this hospital did not save my life tonight. A murmur rippled. Emily's chest tightened. She did. Silence crashed down, heavy and complete. No one moved. Emily felt heat rise behind her eyes and forced it back. She returned the gesture halfway, not quite a salute, not quite a refusal, something private and shared. The man in uniform watched, eyes glistening, then spoke softly. There's a path open to you, he said to Emily. Advisory, training, or you stay here. Either way, the truth is out. Emily looked around the room, at faces no longer dismissive, no longer certain. I don't need to be worshipped, she said. Ryan smiled faintly. I know, he replied, but you deserved to be seen. For the first time in years, she didn't argue. Emily stepped into the hallway alone, the automatic doors hissing shut behind her, like a held breath finally released. The noise of the ER softened to a distant pulse, machines murmuring, voices lower now, changed. People watched her pass, not staring, not whispering, just making space. The same corridors that had swallowed her for years felt different, wider somehow, as if the building itself had adjusted its posture. She stopped near the nurse's station, resting one hand on the counter, feeling the faint vibration of life continuing. For a moment, the past pressed close. Sand in her teeth, radios cutting out, a hand slipping from hers in smoke and fire. She let it come, then let it go. Not erased, just carried differently, roots instead of chains. Behind her, Michael Reeves spoke quietly with his team, his voice stripped of edge, already reshaping the way he led. A young resident caught Emily's eye and nodded, small and sincere. She returned it once, then looked away. Respect didn't need an audience. Purpose didn't need volume. Inside the bay, Ryan slept, breathing steady, alive because someone had seen him as more than a problem, alive because someone had trusted silence over noise. Emily adjusted her badge, the letters RN, suddenly feeling less like a limit and more like a choice. She knew tomorrow would look ordinary again. Shifts, charts, long nights. But something fundamental had shifted, not just for her, but for everyone who had watched the quiet hold the line. Stories like this pass us every day. In hospitals, in offices, in lines at the grocery store. People carrying more than we can see, waiting for someone to notice without asking them to explain. If this story moved you, take a second to like it, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment with these 3 words. Never judge quiet.